are back for the session 7. And now we will discuss another very important topic. We meet online, we sign contracts online, we even fall in love online, make bank transactions.
We cannot hear him.
And all this happens without being absolutely every time sure about who's on the other side, who is ordering that transaction, who are we signing exactly the contract with, and who do we fall in love with? That's also sometimes an interesting question. Okay, so in order to understand this, we have this wonderful panel entitled Tracing App, eID and Certificate Procedures, Accelerating Mobility in the Digital Age. We are increasingly heading towards a world where these digital signatures and digital identification will be more important than your physical ID. And as usual, the gentleman who will introduce this topic is Raoul Herborg. Raoul Herborg. He is our keynote speaker, and in his speech we will hear about the cooperation between governments and industry in the area of cybersecurity. He works at the Giesecke de Vrien company, a global security technology company based in Munich, but with 11,500 employees spanning across 33 countries. It's founded back in 1852, and their customers include central and commercial banks, mobile network operators, automotive industries, health insurance companies, governments, and public authorities. Ladies and gentlemen, Project Lead Central Bank Digital Currencies, Mr. Raoul Herborg.
Welcome. I'm Raoul Herborg, Business Lead for Digital Currencies at Giesecke de Vrien. Digital transformation is going to change our work, it's going to change our life, and it changes the way we interact. Payments are a symbol for human interaction. For centuries, they have been done by cash as a source of trust and security. Whereas cash is still on the rise, the digital age asks for solutions that go the extra mile. How can this cash be complemented by a digital form guaranteed by the central bank as an anchor of trust? For 5 years, Giesecke de Vrien has been developing central bank digital currency, CBDC, as a digital form of payment. Unlike so-called cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, CBDC is the only secure means of payment that is a real currency. It serves as a means of exchange, as a store of value, as well as a unit of account, just like cash, but digital. Today, 86% of all central banks are evaluating ways how to go digital with CBDC. Since our foundation back in 1852, Giesecke de Vrien has been supporting central banks to issue currencies. Today, we are doing very much the same in the digital age. CBDC is not just another tech topic. It will help merchants to lower their costs at the point of sales terminal. It will support the industry to get into the industrial automation revolution. But first and foremost, it will provide substantial benefit to the citizens. As with cash, citizens can now do payments in the digital age with all sorts of instruments without needing expensive smartphones, without having to stick to private payment schemes. They can do payments without compromising their privacy, and they will have real central bank money for all their payment scenarios, just like cash, but digital. We have been accompanying a number of central banks in their endeavors to introduce CBDC, be it in Asia, in Europe, or on the African continent. We do see a potential for giving a productivity boost of up to 0.5% GDP by introducing a CBDC. And we do see a unique opportunity to maintain strategic autonomy in Europe. I'm very glad to see that on this panel, a number of central banks will discuss how to digitize the economy and how to secure their pivotal role. We at Giesecke and Devrient are excited to pursue this discussion and are ready to make CBDC a success among the Western Balkans economies. Thank you very much.
Well, thanks so much, Raul. Important insights. And now, business community of the Western Balkans, please get ready for the moderator of our panel entitled Tracing App, eID and Certificate Procedures, Accelerating Mobility in the Digital Age. She comes from the German Eastern Business Association. The association supports German companies in their market entry in Southeast Europe, reduce trade barriers, all in close collaboration with the German federal government. It's a competence center, a door opener, and a representative of interest of German industry in this region. So we are very glad to have here as a moderator of our next panel, the Regional Director, Southeast Europe at Germany Eastern Business Association, Ms. Anja Quiring.
Yeah. Thanks a lot for introducing me, and please allow me to introduce my panelists here for these next 70 minutes. We have to discuss these urgent and important question of e-identity and tracing apps. So first, please welcome with me Julia Fraser, Vice President Identity Solutions from MasterCard Europe. Please also welcome with me Nikola Nikolov, State Advisor for Information Systems and Technologies of the Ministry of Information Society and Administration in Skopje. Raul Kadiro, CEO of Rollwater from Estonia. Welcome. Also, please welcome with me Rifat Husseini from the Ministry of Finance from Pristina and in charge for the topic of tracing apps, of course, certification procedures and so on. So we will hear later on about your specific topics. And also please welcome with me, last but definitely not the least, Hania Skander from MH Health Initiative from the ITU. And we have a lot of colleagues here already on several podiums and panels. So a very important institution as well. A warm welcome to you too. And so without any ado, I would like to step into the topics we have. Thanks to our keynote speaker who addresses especially the important topic of the currencies, the virtual ones, and there were some specific keywords already mentioned about trust, security, and these topics we will have here in the discussion later on too, especially, of course, if we talk about e-identity and the several solutions of tracing apps and other apps and technical solutions for different services. I would like to give first the floor to Nikola Nikolov from Skopje, and I would like to ask him to introduce a bit about the preconditions for establishing identity solutions and the state of affair in Skopje, please.
Thank you, Anna. I'm excited to be today with you. Speaking about eID, I have to remind and repeat again one of many interested points from the opening ceremony yesterday from the keynote guest, Sim Sikit. As he pointed Digital government is government that delivers results. I will add, we cannot speak about digital government without eID. Electronic identity is crucial for digital services. And you cannot speak about digital identity if you don't have digital register with personal data, trusted, updated, and secure. And this is where the project that I'm responsible for during the last few years comes in. In my country, in Macedonia, that's National Population Register. It contains unified, verified, and standardized data for the citizens. This is very important system that contains all common personal data that are using in private and government processes during the application or execution of a given service. Through the interoperability platform connected with the old legacy system in a different institution, this system automatically updates all records where changes in personal data appear from different live events. No human action, 100% automated process, and all data updated is the baseline for digital services and readiness for trusted electronic identity. Using the interoperability platform, we have a secure environment to interchange data. All government institutions and private companies that have legal base to access personal data are eligible to access this National Population Register. On the other side, good domestic regulation that is fully compliant with the eID and GDPR is also important to make digitalization legal and recognized in the same way the schema. And in our trust list, we have one private eID schema for digital identification. Also, we have a few local companies that are listed as trust service providers in my country. The goal of the government is to digitalize all communication and create all services digitally. There is no better way to fight against crime and money laundering or any other criminal activities as set up a digital government in all processes. Only good IT systems installed and set up in a secure environment where all human activities are logged in and all activities have clear audit log can help us to build better services and with that a better place to live in. Anya, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Nicola. Thank you very much, and especially also for keeping the time, because what our audience does not know, but we have a strict regulation on time, just to make sure that everybody is able to give the impulses he would like to do, and especially for you as the audience, to give also questions to our panelists, which we can include later on into the discussion. But first, let me give the floor to Julia, who is Vice President Identity Solutions Europe at MasterCard, as already mentioned. And in this position, she is driving the adoption and evolution of card-based authentication solutions and strategic development in this digital identity digital identity solutions. This is part of the biography you can also find on the website, just if you would like to read more about Julia, but I think this is very important. And so we are really happy to have you here with us. And I would like to ask you just to introduce a bit on what is MasterCard doing in this field, and especially also the connects to North Macedonia. So the floor is yours, next 4 minutes. Please.
Thank you very much, Anya. I'm very happy to be here. And as Anya just mentioned, I'm representing the company MasterCard. And some of you may wonder, why is a credit card company on such a panel? What am I doing here right now? And the answer is actually very simple. First of all, despite the fact that most people believe that MasterCard isn't a credit card company, we are a company, a technology company, who happen to operate one of the largest payment networks globally. But really, the core of what we're doing is we're operating and running this globally interoperable network. That is mostly being used for payments at the moment. But if you think about it, in order to facilitate payments across the globe, to ensure the identity of the two people who are doing business with one another is actually a very key aspect. And that is why we as a company have been looking into this topic for a number of years now, partially obviously because of the fact that we're more and more transforming into a digital economy, meaning that we're interacting only through digital channels and no longer through physical ones, like on this panel today. So how can you make sure that when you do business with someone you don't actually know, how can you trust that person to be who they claim to be? And how can we build an infrastructure that is actually accessible to everyone and doesn't exclude anyone from our society? The need to prove your identity in digital channels has been building for years. But I think we all agree that during the past year, during the COVID pandemic, this need has further accelerated dramatically. In fact, the 2020 Global Identity and Fraud Report provided by Experian found out that 84% of businesses believe that having a better way of identifying customers will help them spot fraud more easily. Today, however, digital identity interactions are mostly defined by friction, risk, and lack of control. Organizations are mostly overwhelmed with the high cost of ID verification processes, new regulations coming their way, and the main challenge to combat fraud. To address this, we have created our ID network, which is a multi-party digital identity network that provides individuals with the ability to create, manage, and use a digital instance of their identity across a range of different use cases. If you look at Europe or the European Union in a bit more detail, the new eIDAS regulation comes to mind immediately, which is expected to drive harmonization across the European Union and is expected to be implemented somewhere between 2024 and 2026. That is going to be a very important piece that will help us, to drive identity on a bigger scale across multiple markets in the coming years. But in a globalized economy such as the one we all live in today, we actually need global interoperability. We need an ID scheme not only to work within the European Union, but to work across continental Europe and even outside of Europe. And that is where MasterCard can help. We have the experience and have the proven track record of having built already a global interoperable network. And we want to be, a partner in that space to continue doing that in the identity space. But now let's go a little bit more close to the Balkans and have a look at what we are actually doing right now here in North Macedonia. In cooperation with our technology partner Evrotrust and in cooperation with the Republic of North Macedonia, we have together built the first electronic identity scheme, which actually is going live today, if you will, with the first use case. And I'm very happy that I get to be the one to talk about this here on this panel. And I would also like to take the opportunity to thank especially Nicola as a representative of North Macedonia, who has been working with us for the past 2 years on building this. Without that support, this wouldn't have been possible. And I also want to put a bit of an emphasis on the fact that this is a very good example of the public sector and the private sector coming together, bringing in both expertise and partnering in building a good solution for the people, in this case, of North Macedonia. With this ID service, the population of North Macedonia is now capable to download an ID app, verify. This is actually being checked through the national registry that Nicola was just referring to in the previous comment. And once set up, people are now able to actually do identification, to do signatures and e-delivery, all through their mobile phone with the same legal effect as it would have if you would have a vet signature, and that just in a few instances. So I'm very proud of this solution because I do believe it does, on the one hand, have all the necessary security requirements to make this a good and strong and secure solution, but at the same time, it delivers on the very important need for it to be convenient and easy to use for people. And in fact, today, and that is what I was just referring to, we're launching the first use case with the NLB Bank Skopje, which is going to be the first ID service operated by our technology partner, Evertrust, where now documents can easily be signed through this digital identity solution. So you no longer need any tokens, cards, or USB sticks in order to do that. Lastly, I want to say that this is our first identity service going live in Europe, the one in North Macedonia. We're extremely proud of this partnership with the government, with Evertrust, and we're very much looking forward to hopefully doing a lot more in this space in the coming futures, even with other countries. Thank you, Anja.
Thank you very much, Julia, for this introduction, and that makes it a perfect bridge actually to Raul Cardero, from my perspective at least, who is already taking care for the Estonian eID for the past 15 years. So he's an expert on how to implement, I would say, at least from my understanding, those solutions, and who could give us hopefully some insights, maybe also about how we can get the people, the population on board to use finally those services, because and this is congratulations to MasterCard and North Macedonia actually for implementing and starting this process now. But maybe we need some arguments also for the people to join and to use those solutions, and that would be, maybe you can also pick up some of those questions, Raul, while giving us an impulse from your perspective on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you also for having me here. Well, the Estonian experience is rather unique in the world as far as we know. But of course, as an Estonian, we definitely would like to talk about Estonia. But at this point, I think our main focus should be still on the Western Balkans as a whole. Funny thing is that I've been working for Western Balkans for quite some time now. I've studied all of the economies involved, and I've come up with an idea how to actually put it in work. I definitely greet the MasterCard's initiative to create these kind of digital identities for every resident, at least in, as far as I understand this, North Macedonia is the first to go for it. But on the other hand, what I had in mind is to, in a way, create a sample implementation of digital identity and interoperability to the rest of the Europe. As we've noticed, all of the Europe actually has embraced eIDAS regulation since already quite some many years now. But the funny thing is that they don't really work, to be honest. There are some few use cases, there are some few examples where it really is operational. Let's say, for example, Estonia and Latvia is able to exchange digital signatures in between them. There is interconnectivity between Finland and Estonia where they share data rather handsomely by now. To be honest, if you are working, if you're an Estonian working in Finland, the tax information is received by the Estonian tax administration, etc. And therefore, it's in a way there are some few examples, but I would really love to kind of make out or create this kind of example to the rest of the Europe. And the key elements would be definitely that the eIDs and trust services are mutually recognized, and there are public and also private services which are accessible cross-border. So basically, if I would be a resident of North Macedonia, I will be able to access the tax authority in Macedonia in order to fill in maybe a customs declaration or report my taxes to it. So all these kind of different use cases, and that's exactly what I'm at the moment working for. And one of those things that I would like to really highlight here is in a way, yes, digital identity is the key or the first underlying brick of digitalization. The electronic identity is definitely on top of that, but come to think about the trust in it. And when you think about how to actually build the trust from the population, first one is definitely education. People have to understand why to trust and what's behind it. What happens if I start using it? And then what are the consequences? Who will pay for the damages if something goes wrong? What happens if I sign a document which has the obligation of, let's say it's a loan contract, I have to make the payments. How can I be sure that somebody else cannot do it for me? And when it comes down to driving this user experience, I believe they have to focus, of course, on the private sector as well. On the Estonian example, we are using the eIDs only a couple of times per year in order to talk to the government. At the same time, we are authenticated to the banks several times per day just to check if our salary has been deposited. Simple as that. So the private sector and the banks, therefore, drive the whole user experience. And that we have to keep in mind. But on the other hand, the government itself has to act as an enabler. If the government starts enabling these services, then it actually becomes possible. And there are definitely some killer applications that have to be in place. In terms of Estonia, there was two first. First was the tax return. You get back the excessive amount of income tax that you paid, which was really, really popular. And the second one was electronic voting, or actually internet voting. Electronic voting is different in the United States. That's not what we do. So these elements are all very, very important to be in place in order to build the trust needed. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for this also timely and in terms of the time you took for your intervention and also interesting points, especially first, not interesting, but actually that was a discussion of the panel before as well. The government is needed, the politics are needed to enable specific processes, but important point I would take also as a key message from that panel, if you agree, government as an enabler. And interesting to hear that actually kind of a benefit for using those services could be tax returns and specific other things the citizen can get once he's using those services, but in the meantime, of course, it needs trust. So talking about tax returns brings me to Rifat Husseini from Pristina, and so I would like to ask you to give us your impulse about the ambitions and the processes already implemented in Pristina for supporting the public financial management as well as citizens just using specific services in the public administrations. And so the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anna. Hi to everyone, to the dear panelists, and also to all of those who are watching us in this very interesting panel discussion regarding one interesting topic like electronic identification. So as previous speakers already mentioned, the Western Balkan countries, as other countries, Kosovo, needs a very strong electronic identification and digital signature through which public and private sector can be offered, services be offered via electronic channels in the secure way. So currently in our country, uh, we have a national ID card which has been provided from the Ministry of Internal Affairs, precisely from the Agency of Civil Register, which is an card, a digital card also containing the digital certificates and also capable to assign electronically, digitally documents and even transactions. Currently, we have no universal ID solution which people can use. So at the time being, service provider has been pushed to develop their own solutions, which not every time are user-friendly or they are a secure approach to provide them. However, currently our government made a quite considerable progress in terms of process of transformation of IDAS legislation, also corresponding to European Union standards. So by that, we can say that currently the government already passed the law for electronic identification and trust services in electronic transactions, which has been passed now from government to the parliament, and it's in a very last stage of approval. So while we have a law approved and some technical infrastructure and operation activities will take place, we can expect that Kosovo as a country will reach an advanced level of cross-border interoperability readiness for electronic identification and trust services. And as my colleague, previous speaker mentioned, Mr. Nicola, the precondition to have a digital identity is a proper, complete, and concurrent civil register in a national level. So having that said, we consider that Kosovo is very, very close to comply with the standards and being ready to join the interoperability among the Western Balkans economy. The very good example of why the electronic identity is important, and still we can use it even before reaching the IDAS legislation and EU standards. It was a pandemic when the tax administration where I came from was able to provide electronic services to the citizens and businesses in terms of supporting them during the pandemic by equipping them with the proper electronic documents and also being able to submit, receive, processes, even execute the business subvention according to the government decision and help them during the pandemic. So this it was a good example and also the good point to address the importance of electronic identity and focus on the implementation of this platform. Currently, we can say that our government has one of the highest priority digital agenda and also electronic transformation. So having that said, we have a political will in order to make electronic services, electronic channels as a primary channel for electronic services, better to say, and also the will to push government agencies to provide electronic services. We believe that we are in the right track, and in a very short time, we'll be able to compete with the standards and also to be able to interoperate with the West Balkans economy. So maybe this is enough for this point, and I give the floor to you, Ms. Anna.
Thank you so much, Rifat, for this intervention and impulse on what is going on in Kosovo. And now I would like to hand over to Hani Eskandar, who is in charge, or he is the Digital Services Senior Coordinator at the Digital Society Division of the Telecommunication Development Bureau, ITU. I mentioned it already, several colleagues of you are actively taking part here at the Digital Summit and took part also at previous summits as well. and really happy to have you here. And I'm keen to hear from you whether you have some examples for multi-stakeholder design and implementation of services with public-private cooperation in this area we are discussing right now. And especially maybe also again we had this word of cross-border cooperation, interoperability. Maybe you can also take a look on that one too. Thank you so much. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anya, and thanks for having me in this very important panel. Yeah, indeed, I would like in the next few minutes maybe share some very ambitious initiatives that ITU is involved in now with a number of partners, including GIZ Germany, including the government Estonia. And actually we have Raul, who is here as part of this initiative already, and the Digital Impact Alliance that we are calling GovStack. Actually, this initiative really emerged to address some of the challenges that we have been seeing, and we have been receiving requests from our member states about how to accelerate the digitalization of government services, but doing this in a way that is interoperable, secure, and integrated, etc. And as we all know, the current procurement in the government service is very much built on silos. And so the idea how you break out those silos and really be able to make available a common stack that is available for the whole of government. And by stack, I mean a number of reusable components that are common, interoperable, and reusable and shareable that work as a whole so that they are interoperable among themselves. And some of those components, I mean, the ID, of course, is one of the most important bricks in this component, in this stack. But also, as mentioned by previous colleagues, which is very true, there are other components that needs to be there, like, for example, the whole concept of registry and registration, including civil registry, but including all the other types of registries that are needs to be there, you know, for the government functioning, including information exchange, secure information exchange, a little bit similar like, you know, X-Road in Estonia and others in other countries, security, payments, gateways, etc. So there are a number of components that, or you can call them building blocks, that needs to work together in a way to create this stack. And the beauty of having this stack is that it will cut the cost significantly and the speed, but also enable interoperability. So this initiative is about, it's a collaborative initiative to do kind of a community-driven, multi-stakeholder specification exercise. So what we are trying to do is that we take each of those building blocks, including the digital identity, and we pull a group of experts, organizations, countries from different parts of the world who have been working in this domain to work together in order to come up with what could be an MVP, you know, what could be a minimum viable product, what could be the minimum functionalities and standards, open standards that are applicable for this type of component, including digital ID. And we go till the specification of open APIs. Because if we are really wanting to achieve interoperability, etc., I think I mean, it's very now common to adopt this microservices type of approaches that are accessible through open APIs. So in the ID, for example, what we've been doing is that we are pulling, you know, a number of countries, including Estonia, for example, but also others. Some of the private sector initiatives that have been working on open standards and open APIs for ID, but also some of the developers of open source tools and platforms for ID. Like, for example, there is one common platform that is called Mozip that is very known, and it has been deployed in a number of countries, including some other also agencies like the World Bank, who is very active in the digital ID space. So the whole idea is how we can collaboratively and in this kind of convergence exercise, how can we come up with some sort of open standards, open specification, open APIs that will ensure that this component will be interoperable with all the remaining part of the stack. How can this component can interact with the information exchange, how it can interact with the registries, etc. And that's very important because it can really allow multiple providers, whether from the private sector or open source, to deliver together a national-wide kind of identity solution, because you don't want to have maybe one vendor who is kind of monopolizing the deployment, but you would like to see the possibility of having multiple vendors that also even you can switch between vendors to avoid any vendor lock-in. So anyway, so this is the type of specification that we are working on. And of course, it's open, and I'm here using this opportunity to call for any organization like MasterCard and others who would like to take part of this work. You can go to our website called govstack.global if you would like to take part. And what we are doing also, and this goes back to maybe what Raul is saying, that we will be building a somewhat demo or an example, or you can call it a reference implementation of this government platform that is based and structured of those building blocks, and we can showcase how interoperability has been managed to achieve, and how can, more importantly, build services on top of the ID, because it's not enough to have a digital ID, but what is more important, that this digital ID is consumed and used in a lot of other services. So this is, in a nutshell, what we are doing in this collaborative specification exercise. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Hani, for this description of the project, and also for maybe for MasterCard for the invitation to collaborate. And that brings me to the second round of topics or questions we would like to discuss. And again, also the invitation to our audience to come up with questions. I already saw one question about the list, or trusted list of qualified trusted services. There's a question, maybe it goes also to Nicola or Rifat on the lists. How many Western Balkan countries have published their trusted lists in accordance already with those regulations? Maybe this question can also answer by Raul. So please feel free to answer this question later on as well. And but first, I would like to start with Julia, and not just because Hani mentioned MasterCard and invited MasterCard to collaborate in this project, but also to ask you, or to give us a picture, or maybe with Corona-19 was already mentioned, COVID-19 pandemic as maybe a driver of digital transformation at all, but also the question is would be in terms of digital identity. It seems quite important once we have in mind the question of tracing apps, where we have to take a look on privacy standards, which should be implemented there as well. But also somehow you need to combine this app with the personality of a specific person. So that would be my question to you, and I hand over to start the second round, which we more will dedicate to the question of tracing apps, but always, of course, combined with the question of the identity. Julia, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Anya. So first of all, I would like to comment on something that was previously said. I fully and completely agree with the point that in order for digital identity to become a reality, it needs to be usable everywhere in all kinds of use cases. We have to identify who we are so many times in so many different circumstances. Not always is it an official identification when you want to open a bank account or when you go through customs or something. Sometimes it's in smaller use cases, but still only if it is being accepted everywhere And if I can use it on a daily basis, will it ever have a chance to become something that is used on a constant basis? Now, in order to digitize an offline process, such as verifying your identity, which we used to do by going somewhere physically and showing our passport, from our perspective, requires two things. One is it requires a secure and easy to use technology. And second, it requires trust. The technology part, I think, is something that we can solve for. Yes, we still have a lot of work to do. We need to define globally interoperable standards. We need to build the infrastructure. We need to make sure that it's accessible to everyone. So there is a lot of work ahead of us that we need to do in the coming weeks and months and years. But living in a connected, globally connected world like we all do today, the technology aspect of things can be solved for. The trust piece, on the other hand, that's where the main challenge lies, because unless people trust the technology, unless they trust the solution, they will never use it at scale. And so we believe that especially the part around building trust in digital identity solutions is vitally important for any ID solution, be it in the private sector, be it in the healthcare sector, is a key foundation in order for this to become big. And this is exactly why our ID network is built on the privacy by design basis, which puts the end consumer who are using their identity in full control of their data, because it's not really our data, it's their data. My name, this is me. So our ID network is built in a user-centric and decentralized way, meaning that the data will only be stored on the consumer's device and will not end up on any MasterCard or in this particular case in North Macedonia on any Eurotrust server. And that's a very, very important aspect to make the technology more secure, but also to build trust. So let me come back once again to the solution that I've been talking to in the first round in North Macedonia. The ID operated by Eurotrust solution is fully GDPR compliant. It is a decentralized storage model where personal information, personal identifiable data are only stored on a consumer device. Once again, not on any MasterCard servers are those stored. And now the cooperation with the North Macedonian government, which Nicola is representing here today, is a key aspect, because when you download that app and you enter your data and you scan your ID card, now what happens next is there is a communication between that app and the North Macedonian National Registry, where we can be actually sure that this user or this person is who they claim to be, because this is a person that is registered in this national registry, which makes it even more secure and therefore trustworthy for people to use. And now if you take that in mind and you know, think about this in further steps when it comes to health data, then you can start to imagine how this, let's say, infrastructure can build out in the future. As MasterCard, we're already in cooperation with a number of partners, predominantly in the US at the moment, where we are cooperating and focusing to identify common standards specifically for the secure exchange of health information. So again, that you can build this global interoperability. But everything that we do in this particular area is always built on the idea that there will not be any centralized vault of personal information or any super data center that has the information of people at scale. This should always remain with the person themselves. We believe that this will create trust into the system and will help for people to really want to use this, because they will remain in charge of their data and it's up to them where and how they want to use their personal data. And as mentioned already in the previous round, my last point, whatever we do in that space, be it in the identity space or in the health space, we believe in order for this to really be used at scale, it needs to have a globally interoperability or scalability across the globe. That will help to make this something that you can actually use everywhere. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Julia. I would like to hand over actually to Raul, as our next speaker in this round, and maybe you can also pick up the question we got via the chat, as you are really have the experience also with the European, I assume first of all, with European legislation, and maybe you can comment on. So there was a question whether are any of the Western Balkan countries participating in the pilot for the international compatibility of trust services? So as I'm not an expert on that one, maybe I can give this question right to you and to comment on that one. And as I understand, while we are talking about tracing apps, eIDs, trust was mentioned as one of the keywords, and security, it's obviously one of the preconditions to build trust, right? So maybe you can comment on this, and also, of course, you're free to comment on other comments and intervention of the panelists. The floor is yours, Raul.
Thank you. When it comes down to the last part of the question, yes, the Republic of Serbia is the only one who is currently listed in the trust list. I didn't check at the moment, but it was some couple of months old information. When it comes down to the interoperability platform and the pilot, yes, I think all of the countries or all of the economies are working on it at the moment, but it's in rather early stages, and I don't think I'm the right person to comment on that one. Now, when it comes down to the tracing apps and eID and certification procedures, etc., that's always a sensitive topic. And in a way, if we, I can see the MasterCard is trying to aim for world domination in a way to create a digital identity that can be used really everywhere in the world. I totally welcome this kind of initiative. But on the other hand, when you think about the identity as such and identity management, starting from the identity creation perspective, that in my mind should be at least the same body or same person who issues the physical passports for traveling. So in this way, when you talk about trust, having this kind of organizational framework that enables building the trust towards a single body, and therefore the creation of identity, be it first of all the very, very first identity creation process, and creating those documents on top of that, that could be one of the key elements that really would make sense in my mind in order to build trust. But on the other hand, as said before, technology is really there. There are many, many different solutions all around the world, which are kind of enabling the digital identity and enabling the electronic functions such as authentication and digital signatures. But the problem is with all of those solutions is that there is no organizational framework behind. First of all, the local government has to be able to accept it. And when you think about the tracing apps, when you think about what happens if you authenticate to some place, who is going to see that activity? Who is going to be able to create a profile of my activities and to see what exactly did I do? There are different schemes how to put this in place. But I think before thinking about the technical solutions, the organization is the first. And when you just think about the eIDAS regulation acceptance on the economy level in Western Balkans, for the moment, I know that Kosovo is just about to accept one. There is just 3 more countries who are going to do this. at the same time, as Rifat just mentioned, they have their national eID already since a couple of years ago. So, but the fun part is that it doesn't really work. It's too cumbersome. It's too complicated. You need to have a dedicated piece of software. You are restricted to very limited amount of file types or data units for that matter, which you can sign. These are the only PDF files. You cannot actually sign an XML to be transferred to another location. And all these kind of tiny, tiny elements within the scheme are going to be very, very crucial in order to kind of drive the user experience. And when you think about the tracing apps, the amount of data that is required to the provision of service, it has to be defined somewhere. It has to be said out loud, and it has to be kind of privacy driven. You have to be able to kind of prove that you are using only the minimum set of data in order to provide that service. I'm jumping back and forth, so please feel free to interrupt me anytime you want. There's a lot to talk, but I'm trying to fit in the minutes.
Yeah, perfect. And so you fit in the minutes, and I fully understand the topic, because sometimes we have topics which are maybe more focused on the Western Balkans specific, or the Western Balkans economies with their specifics. But once we are talking about tracing apps and the question of privacy and how many data you want to give to authorities or not, this is already a topic which is not just dedicated to the Western Balkans economies, but which is a question worldwide, right? But the interesting one. Thank you so much for this, for your intervention, and which brings me actually to Nicola, back to Skopje. Also, and I would like, especially, I think Raul mentioned the question of accessibility of services for each and everybody, citizen. So my question to you would also be, once you're commenting a bit about the cooperation with MasterCard, you already introduced actually, but maybe to go more in depth, but also how you make sure that every citizen is able to use those kind of services. Because once we try to build trust, I would say it's nice to have people who trust the services, but even though when they are not able to use the services, it's also a question of how useful is it. So Nicola, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Anya. First of all, let me say that I'm happy that finally we have a production version of the project that we spent a lot of time and a lot of effort. We have a very good cooperation with the MasterCard and Eurotrust team. I believe that the trust in MasterCard brand as a worldwide leader will help us to boost the trust in the digital services. This is something that is very crucial when we are speaking about digital services. Trust in the institution, and in parallel, trust in the private eID schema is something that is very important. At the end, all digital services to be used from all population, where everyone will believe in about what's in the background and what is the system in the background. Macedonian citizens now will have for the first time remote digital services, and for sure that this will further support the digitalization of our economy. What we are doing as a government is implementation in a connection between our national portal of electronic services, that is Uslugi Gov.mk, with the Eurotrust RP adapter. And this is the way actually how 150,000 people will be able to open the electronic ID and have a 5 signature for free. And this is how we definitely expect that will boost the digital services and will present the real digital transformation in our country. But finally, Trust, as I said, is a very important, and we should never forget about the privacy and the GDPR regulation. I will back again on the National Population Register that have a detailed log for all used data, for all connection made from the institution or from the companies. And everyone is able to access the report free of charge from the Uslugi.gov.mk portal and check details about the personal data with details about when, who, and based on which regulation were accessed the personal data from the National Population Register. All systems should use the National Population Register as official register for personal data. For the last census, for example, the State Statistical Office used data from this register, and all citizens have such information in their reports of personal data usage. And this is the way how citizens will be informed about their rights from the GDPR regulation. This brings trust in all processes, and only with trust we can have a successful digital transformation.
Thank you, Nicola. And just not commenting these words because they sound like final words, but I would like to hand over to Rifat. The topic of tracing and vaccination apps was also a topic in Kosovo. Would be good to hear from your side. What were the challenges actually to implement, and maybe also is there already a conversation with the European Union, for instance, to get recognition, a mutual recognition of these passports, maybe as we have it for North Macedonia or latest Albania. So floor is yours, Rifat. 4 minutes. 4.
Yeah, sorry, my mic. So as previous speakers already mentioned, that the main challenge remains to be electronic identification for entire region. So, related to the trace apps and interoperability among the economies in the Western Balkans, I think our government made, again, a huge progress in terms of legal framework. And recently we established, or we actually reorganized the agency who is dealing with information and privacy. According to the government program, they already established a law which is 90% compliant with the GDPR, which is a very good sign and a big step forward in terms of being recognized, our, let's say, interoperability, and also whatever applications and processes we're going to be able to manage through electronic channels. So, I mean, legally, we are in a very good position, having the law in compliance with the GDPR, and also having almost ready the electronic identity framework platform. We're going to be able to interact with countries not only in the region but also with the European Union. A good example, which you already mentioned, Anya, it was a pandemic and the process of vaccination, starting from the ability to set an appointment up to the digital certifications. It was a process completely digitalized within a, let's say, state level. And there are some negotiations with the European Union how to recognize this digital certificate of vaccination certificate, which is based on electronic identity, fully compliant with eIDAS regulation. So it is still not a national level authority who provide this certificate, but the provider itself, which is a government electronic portal, already has been able already to implement the digital vaccination certificate compliant with eIDAS regulation. So this is a good sign, and this is also the good sign for our government that how quickly and easy those kind of things can be done, as long as they are technology, let's say, from the perspective of the technology and the solution. I can mention just in a very short sentence, few other interoperability use cases we have within the Western Balkans. I can mention the customs administration data exchange between the countries, which also simplify a lot the administrative burden among the administrations or customs administration. The same thing we'll be able to do in a very near future from our side, introducing the electronic invoices, which basically we're going to digitalize the entire economy within Kosovo. And I presume that the same thing can be done with the other countries, like Albania already did, Croatia already did, and also the other countries are in the process of digitalizing invoices or managing the cash and non-cash transactions among businesses and other entities. So I think we are very close to achieve those, let's say, to be able to interact with other countries and also be compliant with GDPR.
Thank you very much, Rifat. So talking about the, especially the question of certificates, I would hand over to Hani actually for again, last but definitely not the least here in this round. And would be great if you could share with us some examples or experiences globally. So again, we go from the perspective, from the regional perspective back to the global perspective on how to build large-scale population-scale digital credentialing or certificates infrastructure. That would be great if you could just shed a light on that one. And in the meantime, all the others, I would like to ask, please just try to summarize the main keyword of this discussion, of this panel for you. That would be great if we could, after Hani's comments, we could have the last round and just give me the one keynote or keyword you would like to register me and give it to the host as a result of our discussion here. Hani, the floor is yours.
Thanks, Anya, again. And maybe you wanted to close this panel on a positive note, just sharing a very impressive experience actually from India, how they manage, to run their vaccination program for a country that is as big as India, more than 1 billion, population, with so much variety, in terms of the languages, in terms of the level of literacy. How did they manage to create this vaccination platform, and how they managed to deploy, a kind of a digital certificate for COVID-19 vaccination, across all India, and make it in a manner that is very much integrated. They have managed to integrate with their digital identity, which is Aadhaar. They are managing to integrate with existing registries like immunization registry, for example. They managed to cater to all the different use cases in terms of how you manage the digital certificate, how you print your digital certificate, people who do have smartphones, people who don't have any phone. So this is a very complex interoperability, scenario. And India was very, kind of smart in deploying, a vaccination platform that they called COWIN, which is based on some sort of an open source component that is called the Digital Infrastructure for Vaccination Open Credentialing, which is called the DVOC. And I really kind of invite people to look at how they managed to do that. Maybe in 2 words, how, key lessons learned from this experience is that when they approached this interoperability, big interoperability, large-scale deployment of the digital certification for COVID, they thought about it in terms of infrastructure, not in terms of package solutions. So they didn't come up with a solution that does everything. They first unbundled this problem into small bits and pieces, and they managed to do each bits and pieces in a way that is open, and it's in a way that deal with one piece of the story, so that it could be used and reused in very much differences according to the context, etc. So it started, for example, with identifying a kind of a standardized machine readable kind of schema for the digital certificate that is in compliance with the WHO digital documentation for COVID-19 certificate specification. Then allowing another component to do a completely decentralized issuing of digital certificate based on this kind of schema, which is a JSON file for those who are techie, and also allowing for different types of multi-channels to disseminate this digital certificate, through different channels, whether it's an SMS, mobile, even integrate with digital lockers, which are, a kind of trusted, secure digital documents where, citizens can store their digital documents in a trusted manner, or even, exchange it by emails and downloads, etc. And then also opening up the verification of the digital certificate in a way that is completely decentralized, etc. So I think the way India approached it is really to kind of provide those infrastructure components or elements that are available and open and accessible through open APIs, and then let all the ecosystem comes up with their own solutions, bringing new values, developing apps to download your certificate or making verification, etc. So those types of infrastructure really facilitated the whole ecosystem to collaborate in a very interoperable manner, so that they can deliver such a large vaccination program that I think they reached more than 2 billion doses that is managed through this platform. So just it's possible. It's very much possible. Just invitation for people to look more carefully to such a very interesting experience. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Shani. And Goran already mentioned, to me at least, we are really approaching the end of this panel. We have left 3 minutes left. And so, Hani, I would like to ask you first, what would be your keyword and key message out of this panel to the region, to the Western Balkans governments, maybe?
I think
in a sentence.
Really, it's a collaboration. Actually, you need interoperability is only reached by collaboration to agree on some sort of standardized schemas and specification.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Julia.
Okay, so from my perspective, in order for digital identity to scale, I believe you need security in the back end, convenience in the front end, trust in the technology, and global interoperability.
Great. Raul.
Well, I just would like to kind of remind everybody that this is not a technology project. Technology itself contains only of the whole system about 20%. Technology is easy, you can get it from a shop, but without the political will and the kind of legal and organizational framework, nothing's really going to happen. So, and on the other hand, it's not really a money machine, but it's more like an austerity project. You can actually save, on the example of Estonia, more than 2% of GDP just by digitalization. Simple as that. But on the other hand, of course, we have to keep it in mind that this is not a money machine.
Important point, and we should keep it in mind to discuss it the next time. So Rifat, next, just one sentence. You have to unmute yourself, please.
What I can say as a lessons learned for this discussion, that it's many times confirmed that the most important aspect for electronic ID is that we should make sure that we have a secure national level issued electronic identity. So this is the key, because this is a source of, let's say, our source of identification of every single physical person. So as long as we have this compliant as we already have the regulation, we are ready to go on for any level of, or any, let's say, collaboration with the technology solutions, and also involving the multi-stakeholders in this process.
Thank you, Rifat. Nicola, you were the first, so you have the honor, the pleasure to be the last providing a keyword.
What we need in the Western Balkan countries is implementation of eIDAS nodes that will enable us to change information between our economies about our domestic trust service provider and schemas. This will enable trust lists to be mutually recognized across the region and prepare us for the EU. So let's trust in between us.
Thank you very much, Nicola, and thank you very much to all my panelists for this discussion, providing information, providing comments, and especially providing finally some keywords or key messages to the governments, which hopefully will be heard. And indeed, we're not talking or discussing on the question of mutual recognition, but most probably this is simply a precondition for regional cooperation. So therefore, it should be a standard in all the technologies we are discussing. And thanks a lot also to Raoul for mentioning that this is a question of this is not a money machine, but this is a project of austerity, because digital transformation is not just a threat to the economies, but it has a lot of potential. And that's why we are talking about digital transformation in the region. And thank you so lot to all my panelists here. And I hope that this was also a fruitful discussion for the audience we had here. And we are looking forward to the next panels and the closing later on. So thanks. See you again. Bye-bye.
Thanks so much, Ms. Anya Quiring. Thanks. Fascinating discussion, very interesting information. Now it's time for a lunch break. Enjoy your lunch, but don't forget also to check our platform and to socialize, to get in contact with some amazing participants and panelists on our platform. And also during the lunchtime, you will have the possibility to listen on our main stage on the platform to Montenegrin Philharmonic Orchestra. Here in this musical center, we are in the home of the Montenegrin Philharmonic. So please enjoy your lunch, enjoy the concert, and see you at 3 o'clock p.m. Central European Time.